gonna start recording. Perfect. So hopefully you guys are seeing my slides up and everything. We are talking about light and airy edits, going for that pastel, that bright and romantic look. And we're going to go through a lot of your guys' photos, your raw images that you've submitted to this edit. So just for those that are new, a quick introduction. My name is Pi. You are in the Facebook Mastermind. And if you're new there, what you can expect is basically weekly lives like this one, where we talk about different topics. Sometimes we do editing, sometimes we do lectures, all of that. But weekly value being added to your guys' lives. That is the entire goal. We want to make this the best free mastermind group for wedding and portrait photographers. So inside of it, you're going to find how-to guides. You'll have free tutorials, support and guidance. One of the best communities, seriously, online. In my opinion, it is the best community. So supportive, incredible people inside of our community. And when you guys are there, you guys can also check out in the guides section. So if you just pull up the group and you look in the guides, you'll actually see each of these different lectures kind of organized so that way you can reference them at any point you need. So a lot of your frequently asked questions are going to be there. One of the ones that I would recommend if you're new to the group to start out with is just how to maximize your experience in the group. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this. Make sure that we don't have any questions. And someone said, here for a bit before today's mentorship. Yes, we're going to do that soon too. So welcome everybody. Can't see where to get permission. No worries. It's in the description of the videos. If someone's familiar with it, they can maybe link it up in the comments or in the chat. But otherwise, I'll post it afterwards too. So today we are going to be going through the Pastel Pack. So basically, we're going to be using two specific tools. The Pastel Pack as well as the AI Retouching Toolkit. These are Visual Flow preset packs that are available. And there's of course going to be a lot of different sort of just insights and tips along the way. So even if whether you're using them or not, there's going to be a lot of benefit here. But this will be a perfect place to kind of get an idea of not only how to edit with this, but what the style, what the aesthetic of these packs look like so you can kind of decide what's right for you. So topics and questions for today. What is the Pastel Pack stylistically, okay? Like from the aesthetic view, what are we aiming for? How do you modify the look of the pack? What is lighting condition-based development? We're gonna talk through advanced editing techniques, going through all of your guys' images, and we'll just dive straight in. So examples with community raw files are included. If you have a question at any point, please let me know. So I love interaction. I love feedback. If you love an edit, throw down an emoji, throw down a heart, a fire, whatever you want. If you hate an edit, let me know what you didn't like about it. All of it, I want to be able to interact and just have a two-way dialogue with you all, okay? So I'm going to share some of my experiences and kind of some thoughts, and hopefully this is very beneficial to each of you. But please interact with me. So let's talk first about the Pastel Pack aesthetic. So before we get into actually doing the editing, and oops, there is a Ecamm Live program window down here. I'll just move that over there so it's not distracting. And everything else should be clean now. Okay, so in defining the look, what we're talking about with the Pastel Pack is soft sort of pastel colors. So all the colors kind of shift a little bit to become a little more soft, a little bit brighter, a little bit less saturated. It's a bright and kind of romantic overall look, and it's inspired by Fuji 400H. And so the first thing that I want to say in this, and why the heck did my thing just flip over there? Okay, the first thing that I want to say in this is start with the right image. So when we say like this is inspired by Fuji 400H, it's not meant to emulate it, it's inspired by it. This is a vintage sort of look, right? It's an aesthetic that has a lot of green tones. It kind of shifts colors, and it's something that we have naturally seen through vintage imagery, through imagery that was shot back on film. So one of the things that I like to say is you can quickly go wrong with this aesthetic by simply choosing the wrong image to be applying it to. Okay, if you're choosing images that are shot with like, you know, they're modern images, they're shot with dramatic flash, you know, they just don't look like they're a very natural vibe, or maybe in a scene that's very dark and kind of over the top, then this really isn't going to be the right look for it, because it's not designed for that aesthetic. So you want to choose images that are basically either shot natural light or shot with flash, but in a natural way, okay? In a way that we would have done, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago on film. so that's kind of the first thing I'm going to say. And you'll see that as we go into your guys' images, because some of the images that were submitted do fall into that. And I'll kind of point out where it goes. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look at this. I'm going to switch this over to Lightroom. Let me know if you guys are seeing my Lightroom panel right now. And we're going to talk first. So this first little piece over here I wanted to bring up was, how do I modify or tweak the preset? So let's go ahead and just apply the look to a couple different images, and we'll talk about how to tweak it. That way this tutorial is kind of a full guide on using the pack. So I'm going to make a quick virtual copy, and let's go ahead and just apply the pastel soft light version to this. And so quickly you can see like the one click is going to get us to this point. And it's really nice. What I like about this aesthetic, it's designed to be bright. So it does have a nice brightening effect in the tone curve, which I often find I'll actually raise it up a bit more. So this is one of those looks that you want to be bright. That's how you get that nice, very soft look over skin, everything. I like the temperature and everything on this, but let's go ahead and take a look at the actual settings, and you can draw some inspiration from this as well. So on the tone curve, let's go ahead and just look at the point curve rather than, what is it giving us right now, the region. Okay, so here's our point curve. So we're adding a lot of mid-tone brightness and a bit of contrast with a large S-curve. We're flattening out some of that though with the highlights, the whites, and bringing up shadows and blacks a bit. So kind of balancing out between brightness and overall contrast. When you guys are applying this, I would just adjust contrast when you want to edit contrast. So oftentimes I find myself actually reducing contrast a little bit on this look because I like that very soft effect that I get with it. As far as color, this is where, if we go ahead and click, we're doing a lot of manipulation to overall hues, to saturation. We're really pulling a lot of the saturation out. And at any point, by the way, you can pause this and kind of take a look in the replay. But this is what's driving kind of a huge portion of the look. In addition, we're not doing any color grading in this. We're doing camera calibration. So we're actually adjusting hues further inside of the camera calibration panel. So when we're going back to the slides, if you want to modify or adjust any of these, I kind of made some quick notes. Like the tone curve is where you're going to adjust contrast and exposure if you'd like. You can also do it with base tones, but I like to leave base tones alone, so that way I can adjust those on an image-to-image basis. So I kind of do most of my work in the tone curve. You can also adjust color tones in HSL. You can also adjust the calibration if you want to adjust the hue shift a little bit. Whenever you want to make these adjustments, what you're going to do is just kind of dial those in. So let's go ahead and just do another one. I'm going to go to this image. I'm going to apply the pastel look. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little bit of a boost in exposure. And let's say for this image, or let's say just overall, I want to adjust a preset to kind of better match my style. And maybe my style is not quite so much mid-tone contrast and brightness. So I'm going to pull down a bit here. And maybe I want to flatten out the top end a little bit more. So that's the tone curve that I want to save out to this preset. What I would do is just go and right-click on that preset, go ahead and go update with current settings. I'm going to pull this right into the center, and you're going to go back to this slide deck and look at this. So we're going to just subtract out white balance and exposure. So I'd click check all, remove white balance, remove exposure. I don't usually need transform, but it's not going to hurt anything. The one main thing that you want to do is make sure that you don't have any masks saved into the preset. And then you're going to go ahead and click update from there. So that's how you would update the look essentially, okay? Last thing, let's go ahead and just jump back for 1 second. Let's talk briefly about the lighting condition-based development system. So if you're new to Visual Flow presets, we design every one of these presets to basically have a baseline look, which is like, say, the Pastel Pack is a look, the Modern Pack is a look, Crush Pack is a look. And then we adapt that look over the different lighting conditions that you might be shooting in. And what this does is it automatically builds in. We take all these different lighting conditions, we automatically build in all the adjustments that you would need to adapt the look over to shooting in that lighting condition. So when I come back to Lightroom for just a moment, and we're going to get into the community edits in just a second. But if I look at an image like this and I go, hey, this is kind of a high dynamic range image, what I would do is go straight to HDR. And that automatically, see, if I start with pastel with the soft light, then I can do that. But as I brighten it up for skin tones, I can lose a lot of the background detail and whatnot. So instead, I can go straight to HDR and it lifts out everything. It retains color, it does a beautiful job. And then I can adjust from there basically kind of as needed. But start with the lighting condition that's closest to the scene that you shot or what you shot in. So this one, for example, I would go to hard light because it was shot in hard lighting. And then from there, I'd kind of brighten, I'd get my white balance and everything where I'd like it. And that's about it, okay? That's the typical adjustment, but I want you to start with the lighting condition that you're shooting in. It's gonna get you really close to where you need to be and then make your adjustments as needed. All right, let's go back to this for a brief second, make sure we covered everything. So we got lighting condition-based development. You understand what that is now. And by the way, each of these I've kind of listed out here. When you look at it inside of Lightroom, it shows you the same thing where, you know, hard light is harsh light. It's open sun. It's where you have hard shadows. Backlit is when you have low contrast or flares. Tungsten is that warm orange that you see indoors. Tungsten mixed has daylight. So there's a description of what each of these common situations are, so you guys kind of know how to apply it. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into examples and advanced editing, and we're gonna just jump into your guys' images. So let's go. If there's any questions, by the way, please let me know. One person said, pastel is one of my absolute favorites. Modern's great too, but really loving pastel this time of year. That's awesome. It's a great kind of like springtime vibe, right? I like pastel for that too. Let's jump into Lightroom, and I'm gonna go ahead and just edit in the order that these are submitted, and we're gonna go fast, friends. So if at any point you guys need to, if you guys have questions, if you guys want to, replay, that's what the replay is gonna be there for, so you guys have that. But these are submitted by Christian Bacher, and this is a great set of images that really works well with this pack, right? They're natural light images. We have a lot of greenery, which is great. What I'm gonna do is just go ahead and I'm gonna create a virtual copy of each of these with everything reset so we have comparison points. Let's go ahead and sync so we get this across both. There we go. Okay, so for this, I'm just gonna go ahead and apply soft light because it's not really a strong flare. It's just a nice soft sort of light effect that's coming through. I'm gonna bring the exposure up. This is one of those things, I'm gonna warm it up now too. One of those things that we often kind of will go wrong with in this pack is that we don't go bright enough. And by the way, I'm selecting both so you can kind of see what the original image would be with the same white balance and exposure and what it is now with the pastel look. So you can see what's happening just with the preset being applied. So again, let's do the same thing here. I'm gonna apply pastel. And with this click, there's already quite a bit of brightening going on, but again, I want to bring this up. I want my whites to be white. And as you notice, what's happening is as it gets brighter and brighter, those skin tones fall into that highlight range where the pack is designed to really create these soft and kind of like beautiful skin tones. With this one, I'm gonna go ahead and bring the tint back a little bit and I'm gonna leave it about right there. I love that. And look at this. Like this pastel really works so beautifully with that kind of perfectly imperfect kind of look. It's like they're shot naturally. The light doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be completely dialed in. It's shot the way it would have been back with film. That's what we want to go for here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply for this one. Let's go hard light because I have a lot of deeper shadows in this. So I might go hard light, maybe even HDR and see which of these I like better. I'm actually going to do hard light. And what's happening is between soft versus hard, you can see lower contrast and then HDR kind of lifts the blacks, right? So I'm gonna go right about here and then lower my contrast. I might raise my exposure a bit, right about there. I'm loving it. I'm gonna bring my white balance up, bring my tint down a little bit. And that's beautiful, okay? I love this. So look at the colors that we get. You can see, by the way, pastel is gonna shift color tones. So when you're looking at like blues, just if you have clients that are like, I want things exactly as they are, pastel probably isn't going to be the right look, and they probably wouldn't be asking for that anyway. But just know that there's going to be some color shifting going on because that's what's happening. Is it's making the blues more of a pastel color, making the browns more of a light earth tone. So this is the setup for it. So let me know what you guys think so far of these edits. Let's go on to Tony Tones. Okay. Now, Tony, this is kind of a great example of like, I wouldn't use pastel for this look. And I'll show you exactly why. And I think we have another user that submitted images along these lines too. I think it was Josh. So let me show you with each of these. We're not going to go through the full edits on these. I just want to show you when we take modern images that are shot with like modern lighting and a modern aesthetic, and it just doesn't look like it doesn't fall into this kind of natural vibe. We don't really get any benefit of using pastel for these. In these images, there's not really that much color to begin with, right? So as I click one of these, you don't even really see much happening to the image because there's not a lot of color in the scene other than just skin tone. And same thing with a shot like this, shot indoors with some sort of like off-camera flash. We're not really going to get the most out of this look. And so we could try to kind of manipulate and get our way there. But honestly, I wouldn't be using this pack for these types of images. This one might work a little bit better simply because it's shot in the evening. It looks like it's kind of a natural light aesthetic. So let's just take a look and let's get a white balance read. The only thing that kind of, again, throws it off for me is we clearly have these red LED panels in the back. And again, if we're going for like something that has more of a vintage aesthetic, that throws it off to me. Having a modern car with modern LEDs, it throws off a sort of vintage vibe to it. That being said, this one will work better than the others. I'm going to go ahead and use tungsten for our lighting condition. And it's working better, but still I would say this wouldn't really be the look that I'd go for just because this has a lot of modern elements to it. And same thing with these shots that Josh has here. Very dark, and Josh, I'll give you some thoughts. I think you mentioned this I think you mentioned it was a very challenging shoot to edit. We'll get to these and I'll give you some thoughts here, but I wouldn't be using pastel for these either. Again, very kind of like unnatural sort of lighting effects, and so we're not going to really be getting what we want to get out of the pack. So let's keep going. Here we have some images from Philip Lord. These make for some really good candidates. So let's go ahead and start with this and we'll create our virtual copies. So same thing. I'm going to start soft light. If I want a bit of a softer look to it, I'm just going to bring it to hard light. So that's going to just soften the overall contrast as if it were shot in hard light, which kind of brings up the idea that you don't have to use the lighting conditions always based on the lighting conditions. You can use it stylistically. So once you understand kind of what the lighting conditions are doing, you can use them as you see fit to match your style rather than just by kind of how they're made to work. And let's go ahead and answer a question too while we're here. So Greg said, question about pastel in general. Do you ever feel that the greens are just a bit too saturated? I like the look in Lightroom, but later it's seen too strong. That's the way that it's designed right now is a baseline. Okay, so Greg, you can always tweak it more. So like, for example, on an image like this, right, I could go down to my greens and I could just pull a little bit more saturation out of it. Okay, and you'll find some of that saturation is actually in the yellows too. So if you want to bring some of those yellows out, you can pull it down. The reason why we create these baselines is because if you go too far with these adjustments, if you have yellow clothing, the yellow clothing just completely disappears, right? So if we pull things too far, it can affect things in a way that we don't want. But the easy fix is just for you yourself, you might adjust these settings to kind of your own taste. So I would do that down in the color mixer. But great question. So look, we hardly did anything to this and we get a beautiful effect. One of the things that I love doing is if you're using the retouching toolkit, I would suggest not using the background burning. So a lot of times we kind of want to burn down backgrounds and make it look, I don't know, we just want to lift the subjects out, right? I don't like this effect with pastel. Pastel's supposed to be bright from edge to edge, so it doesn't look great. So what I'm usually doing in the retouching toolkit is I'm just adding portrait retouch. So I'm just putting on the portrait retouch to kind of soften skin, to brighten eyes, to do all that baseline work, and I'm kind of calling it a day, okay? Let's go on to this one. I got to reorganize my preset panel too. All right, so let's go. I'm going to go soft light here, and we can click hard light if we want to. I like soft light in this one. What I am going to do is go ahead and adjust my white balance, bring the temperature down a bit. I'm going to go right to about here and bring the exposure up. So notice that like this is kind of like a proper exposure, right? Or you might even think that that's a little bit bright. I tend to bring it even brighter. So I tend to go up even more, and I might bring the blacks up a little bit as well. I like it. This look is meant to be bright, okay? So you want to have these bright skin tones, but look at the and look at what it does to skin tones. It's really beautiful. Yes. So edge to edge bright, that's really what we're aiming for with this pack. And so we can mess that up by doing things that we typically would do. Like a lot of the times I typically would add a radial filter. I would burn down and bring attention to the center. With pastel, it's not meant for that. It's meant for brightness, okay? And we want the image bright from edge to edge. Which is also why profile correction is built into this. It's also why there's a heavy amount of exposure brightening built in as well, which even if we adjust the tone curves in the future, I wouldn't adjust this one because pastel needs that bump in brightness to get the look. So here, honestly, this can kind of go either way. This looks like it was flashed off the ceiling. So I'm gonna leave it probably with this hard light setting just to reduce a little bit of the contrast. This is one of those cases where I might do a tiny bit of, I'm going to do my portrait retouch. I might do a tiny bit of edge burning. And the reason why here isn't because of like we want to darken the edges. The reason why is because if you're using flash, everything close to the camera tends to be brighter than things further back. So he is actually brighter. Everybody in the left and the right, they're actually brighter. So I'm just going to bring a radial burn and it's going to be very subtle. I'm going to place it right over them. And I'm going to go ahead and now I can brighten up the image from edge to edge and they're not too bright on the edges, okay? So this is where I would go with this shot. But you can see how nice the colors are. And this is a good example of like, if we go down to the HSL, like Greg was mentioning, like, well, can I modify this further, right? If we go down to the HSL, and I start pulling the yellows out further, notice what happens to the yellows. So we kind of push these numbers to a place where we still get good results, where yellows still appear yellow. Because if you start going any further, it starts to get a little bit like dingy. Like you start to get so much color loss there that you don't see the yellows in it anymore in the shot. And that's kind of what we try to avoid. Okay. Someone asked, does this work with darker skin tones? Absolutely. And hopefully we have some. Let's see if we have some. Oh, Helen, I might have mistakenly placed, I don't think I got your images in there. So let's go on to Josh's. So Josh, I'm not going to edit these ones. I'm going to give you some thoughts in terms of like shooting them. Okay. So you mentioned that these are tough to edit. The reason why they're tough to edit is because you're using only natural light. You don't have any light on them to kind of clean up all the existing light. Okay. So I know you're in a museum. You probably can't put up a flash in a museum, right? Some of the things that you can do is potentially stand them under lighting if there's some sort of light there. So if there's a can light that's landing in a certain spot, you can actually position them there. Although a lot of times if it's not angled just right, you end up kind of getting this where like the light's kind of hitting the tops of their head and you get these awkward shadows. So what would often work in this is if you can't put down a flash, bring along a small LED panel that you or someone else can hold to kind of create some light and add light to your subjects. This by itself is going to make these infinitely easier to edit. That being said, like from here, there's not too much you can do because these are so underexposed that like I would probably just end up black and whiting a lot of these. I know they probably wouldn't want that because they wanted to have the colors of the scene, but they're so dark and there's so much mixed lighting on them that I think you're going to have a lot of challenges trying to get it to look right. If you wanted to try, you can go to saturation and start kind of clicking and pulling down saturation over areas, but you can see that even by manipulating that, even by adjusting our white balance, we can't get it to a place where we have the right color tones, if that makes sense. All right, let's keep going. We have Mary Jonna Belton. Let's see here. All right. If anyone, by the way, has the eCam link, I would appreciate if you guys post it into the comments, or you can even post it in the group as a separate thread. I'll do it after our session too. Okay, these are from Marjana Belton. Let's go ahead and take a look. These are great candidates for this kind of a look. These are shot with a very natural vibe. Let's go ahead and edit these. All right. So let's dive down to pastel. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and just go hard light. Okay. And honestly, I kind of like the look already. I would probably give it a tiny bit more warmth to it. I might back off the contrast a little bit. And we're just going to adjust the crop a tiny bit. And that's kind of like where I would leave a shot like this. Again, kind of leaving it bright from edge to edge. Let's go ahead and do this one. This pack is so easy to edit with when you shoot it. Like when it's just natural and you're shooting it natural, it's super easy. We're literally just clicking to add it the look and then just getting your white balances right and calling it a day. I'm going to go ahead and do a little portrait retouch for this. It's going to soften skin, kind of unify color tones, and you can bring it up or down. I'm going to leave it kind of more on the light side. I like that. Okay. Let's go here. Okay, so if you want to compare apples to apples here, we could dial in the white balance first. So I'm going to go right about there. And then let's go ahead and apply it and compare the look. So let's go soft light. So now you can see exactly what's happening with that one single kind of click. Okay. And then from here, I might bring the, it looks like the pinks are way up. So I might bring the greens back into it. And I like going even brighter. So that's one of the things that you'll notice is that when you're editing with this look, most of us have a tendency to go too dark. Most of us have a tendency to kind of bring it down here. And I'm like, no, I get why you're doing that because we're used to the other packs. We're used to editing with other styles. Pastel wants you to bring it up. This vibe, this look wants you to go up half a stop to even a stop brighter than what you typically would be doing. It has a very nice look to it. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here with the retouch. And if you guys are unfamiliar, the AI retouching toolkit, oops, I'm sorry, that added the background burn, and I don't want that. That goes the exact opposite direction of natural. When we start burning the background, I wanted a basic retouch. So the AI retouching toolkit is, I did an advanced Lightroom AI kind of tutorial that you guys can check out in the guides. The retouching toolkit is a professional version of that, where basically it's every one of these adjustments that we would commonly make put into a pack where it's all dialed in. So with one click, you get sharpen your subjects, enhance clothing, whiten the teeth, enhance the lips, hair, eyes, everything is kind of done for you. So that's what it's meant to do, is to help you individually just click through and get these really beautiful kind of, well, take retouching as far as you basically can go inside of Lightroom. Okay, so this is a little bit of flash, but it's still done in a way that's like very natural, and so it'll still work really nice. This is a good example of kind of flash done naturally. So I'm going to go soft light for this one, and I like the brightness over the skin tone. I'm going to bring up the warmth maybe a tiny, tiny bit. Okay, and then let's go ahead and do that portrait retouch again. Again, avoid the temptation to start burning the backgrounds with this look. So look, I know you can do this, and if you like the aesthetic, that's fine. It's just, to me, this is not meant for that. The one thing that I'll say that you can do with this, instead of burning the background, if you want to just preserve a little bit of sky, just use if you go right under the dodge and burn, you have a burn sky option right here. That's going to look far more natural, and it'll help you retain your skies better. And you can even adjust the amount on this, so you can slide it up and down to kind of fall into the pastel look. So that's going to be the best way you can kind of get a little bit of the color back without killing the look that we're going for. Okay. So Marjana, great job on those. Let's go ahead and, oh, thank you, Kenneth. Kenneth posted a link. It's this one right here, and that'll give you the link to give access. Okay. And, oh, Marjana said, would you recommend using another preset pack also with this image? So let's go back to those for a second. Marjana, it's really like about your style and preference, okay? So I would say, like, I wouldn't really recommend anything. If a style and aesthetic works for you, then go with it, right? For me, I think pastel, it works beautifully on this scene, and I would probably either go pastel or I might go, like, say, modern, okay? And I'll show you what that would look like. So I can take the exact same image and I can just flip it over to modern. You'll see what it'll look like with that. And when I go modern, I would do other things to it. So this is where I would go with the retouch with pop and enhance. And I would go to tools, and I would also add a radial burn. Okay, so I'm going to bring that right over my subject. And I'm going to go ahead and darken down the image now and maybe warm it up a bit more. Okay, so look, You can't really say one of these is right or one of these is wrong, but they are entirely different, right? The goal of each of these packs is to fall into an aesthetic that you love, an aesthetic that you want to use for your clients. And so I wouldn't say there's a right or a wrong in any of these. It's just each one of them are going to have a very different look. So for example, if I also switch this now over to Crush, Crush is designed to be very high contrast. Okay, so I'm going to brighten or darken the exposure on this one, and maybe I'll use hard light because that's a little bit too much contrast, and we'll even take down the, okay. And then we'll do another one. Let's go ahead and do, let's do the mood pack. Okay, we'll brighten this one up a little bit. So I want you to take a look through each of these. Each of these has such a completely different look and aesthetic. We can't say that any of them per se are wrong, right? They're just different. So that's what I mean is like, I wouldn't say personally like what I would suggest with this. I would say that the looks that I'm drawn to most are probably modern, mood, as well as pastel. But it kind of depends on what I'm shooting. And I'll give you a quick example before we go on to the next one. A quick example of this is like sometimes I'll shoot an image. Like this is my daughter Josie, right? And as soon as I was in this scene and about to photograph it, I was like, I'm going to edit this entire shoot with pastel because I want it to look soft. I want it to look bright and beautiful. And so when I get it, I go straight to pastel. And look, I want to show you something too, but I'm going to go ahead and brighten this up. And look at this beautiful aesthetic that this has. Personally, I just don't feel like this would look right if it was, it still looks good crushed, right? That's still a very different look and a vibe. But for me, for this kind of a scene, I wanted to have this like bright and airy feel to it rather than super vivid color. But each of them work. What I wanted to show you here too was what's happening to skin tone. So like oftentimes when we apply this, like I said, we need to get into the habit of kind of going a bit brighter when we go pastel. But I want you to pay attention to the skin tones. Once you get the skin tone into that bright range, pastel is designed to kick in right up in this range right here where things start to get on the bright side. That's when the skin tones fall in place. Usually when you're getting weird skin tones, whether you're working with people of color or just anybody and it just looks kind of like muddy, it's because the image isn't bright enough yet. So that's the issue. We have to keep brightening to get the skin tones to fall into that range, and then all of a sudden it looks gorgeous. So again, watch what I'm going to click and drag. Watch when you see, as soon as you see the skin tones fall into that range, look, right here we start to hit it, and watch how they just kind of clean up right as they go into that range. You see that? So that's the big thing when it comes to this look. Okay, let's go back here. All right, I think I got Marjanas. Let's go to Victoria Jones. Yeah, so, oh my goodness, you're really right. I'm so afraid to go bright, but that's the look that I love. Yeah, it's hard for us, right? Because we're not used to it, and so it kind of feels like we're doing something wrong. I totally get it. Let's go ahead and do this set. And I think I said who, yeah, Victoria Jones. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and apply it. And I'll do it again right here, because you'll notice like you apply it, and I'm all, every time someone uses it, they're like, oh, it doesn't give me exactly what I want. And I'm like, you just got to brighten it. So watch, we start pulling the exposure and watch what happens. Isn't that wild? Like as soon as you get into that highlight range, the skin tones just fall beautifully in. And I'm going to go ahead and just adjust my temperature. And this is one of those things where if you shot all these identically, I can just move from one image to the next and just click previous. And boom, there you go. I'd brighten this up a little bit more. Go to the next one, hit previous again, brighten this up a little bit more, and you're done. Okay, so you can simply hit previous to sync them over and you're good to go. With anything where I see skin tones, they're fairly close up, I'm also gonna go back up to the AI toolkit and just do a quick portrait retouch. Honestly, for kids, I wouldn't say that this is a must. It does do a little bit of nice stuff on the clothing and whatnot, but it's not a must because kids already have, usually they already have very soft skin tones to begin with. So just a heads up. Okay, so these are from Brian Julie O'Neill. Let's do another edit. Okay, we have a question, but can we do light and pastel for some photos and not for another shoot? I don't want my senior males in pastels, maybe a prom portrait. Yeah, so what I usually do is I edit shoot to shoot, right? So I want the images within a specific shoot to be consistent. But from shoot to shoot, I don't think it matters that much. I do like a bit of cohesiveness when it comes to like posting them onto social media and whatnot. So it doesn't look like your style is varying so much. But if you tend to kind of edit between like, modern and pastel, or you kind of use these and you're always editing kind of towards the same brightness, usually these differences in saturation don't look wonky to, a client. What does look wonky is if you're bouncing between like cinematic mood shots versus crush versus pastel versus black and white, then it can look like you haven't really defined a style. And that's what I kind of tend to avoid. But there's no issue at all with kind of editing one shoot with this and another shoot with this. And you don't even have to show all of them on social media too. So when we have clients that want editing styles that deviate from what we are known for, we usually just don't post them. So that's something that we do too. Marjana said, do you ever bring up the detail in clothing or the whites? Yeah. So I'll show you how to do that too, because we have another image here with whites, right? So that's a great question, because when I apply pastel here, and you can go with either of these. So either soft light or hard light. If I want a little bit less contrast in the scene, I might do hard light, okay? So I'm going to go hard light for this one. And this one, I'm going to bring the exposure down just a smidge. And I'm going to go ahead and get my white balance sort of dialed in. So I'm going to raise it up the tints a little bit, and right about here is nice. Okay. So you'll notice that like at a certain point, whites of a dress, they can sometimes maybe go too white because they're a bit brighter than skin tones, right? So the quick fix for that is if you just go to subject, there's a couple ways of doing this. We can select, let me do this. I'm going to have you do this because it'll be a quicker way of getting there. So if you apply the portrait retouch from the retouching toolkit, you get this set of retouching options, right? So you get sharpen subject, enhance clothing, you get all that. So what I would do is just go and choose the enhanced clothing mask, because that's already done for you. So it's already selecting the clothing. And then from here, just pull the highlights down a little bit, okay? So you can see I can adjust the highlights back, adjust the white point back. What I generally like to do is leave the whites a little bit higher because I want some whites coming through, but I'll bring the highlights back a little bit, okay? So when I turn this on and off, you can see that it's doing a nice job of just bringing it's keeping the dress white, but we're bringing back the highlight details, okay? So that's the trick that I would use in that case. But look at these. I love this look, especially with the greens and with the light coming through the back. You'll get a beautiful look here too. Now, one thing, if you have a shot like this where you're like, hey, I want to see some of the color in the sky, right? Let me make sure my overlay's on. Okay, so I want to see some of the colors in the sky. What I would do is go to this. Use the HDR version, because that's going to bring out all the dynamic range. So I'm going to click HDR. You might find yourself actually bringing the exposure down a little bit in that case. I'm going to go down just a little bit right there, and I'm going to adjust my temperature, okay, right about here. What this will do is it'll preserve more of those blues in the sky, and then that's where we can also go up to the retouching toolkit, click Burn Sky, and then automatically we get a little bit extra in there. And let me click this one. Let's go down a little bit more. Let's just click the exposure. Oh, you know what? We might not have had a lot of sky detail here. So it looks like the sky was blown out here, but if the sky were not, then you could kind of click this and get a little bit of color back. You could also do this where you bring the temperature of the sky back, and that kind of brings more of those blue tones back into it a little bit. Okay, so we kind of go from something that doesn't look like there's any detail to at least having a little bit of blues up there in the sky. Let's do the same thing here. So let's go to pastel, let's go HDR. And again, look at how the skin tone's kind of a little bit muddy. Watch this. Just gonna click and drag and watch how they just clean up as we go up. That's where we're going, okay? Now you're looking at the rest of it and you go, well, maybe in this scene, the edges are getting too bright. That's okay. If in this scene, the edges are getting too bright, then that's when you're gonna go ahead and just add that radial filter, okay? And then drop it right into the center. And then from here, you can adjust the effect of it. I'm gonna go like 60%. But that's the look, that's the aesthetic. All right, friends, I think we got it. I'm gonna go back to, let me know if there's any questions. Oh, I think Marjan, I left your comments up. Let me go back to just this pack right here. And if there's any questions in the meantime, let me know. But I'm going to pull this up and just show you a couple more things with these edits. So let's go with this one. Okay, I want to finish this out. So let's go ahead and reset this. Again, the typical workflow that I'm going to use for this is going to be pretty darn simple. I'm going to close out everything so all we see is just, oops, not apply a preset. So I'm just going to go pastel. We get a nice brightening effect. I'm going to go ahead and raise my exposure. I'm going to drop a little bit of contrast, find my white balance. Okay, so I'm going to go down a little bit, right about there. Get these beautiful skin tones. So if you notice, her skin tone is actually, she's Indian, but she does have more fair skin, right? So it's tan, but not like super dark. So, but I'm still kind of editing it on the very bright side. And then from here, I'm just gonna go portrait retouch. And that's gonna give me my nice kick and pop in the dress, everything. And then if you wanted to make any adjustments, you have that layer there again, where you can adjust the exposure on it if you want, if it's a little bit too bright. You can just adjust highlights, everything. I like it where it's at right now, so I'm gonna leave it right there. But that's it, okay? Let's go ahead and do another one. Let's grab this one. So with a shot like this, I would, so just going back to the reset version, just go hard light, again, brightening up. And I love, again, it gives us a very, I almost feel like this is a really beautiful pack for getting kind of an editorial look. I'm gonna go with that and just reduce a bit of contrast. I'm not gonna worry about any retouch on this one for the scene. Okay, so this is where I would go with a shot like that. Going back to, let's find an image maybe with a bit of darker skin tones, and I can give you that one example before we wrap it up. And in the meantime, let me know if there's any other thoughts or questions. Let's go ahead and find, I'm just gonna look for, let's see. There we go. Let's find some darker skin tones. Here we go. This is a perfect one because we have both. So let's create a virtual copy here, and what I'm going to do is also add this so I can have this, I'll upload these so you can check out the befores and afters as well. So let me just, actually I'll do it after the fact because I don't know where the whatchamacallit is, where the keyword is. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this is I'm going to go soft light, and again, we're going to zoom in. I want you to pay attention to colors. So obviously at a certain point, her skin is going to be too bright and his is going to be dark, right? So I'm going to bring it up to about right here. And honestly, I love the aesthetic and the look of this, but notice that his skin tone still looks great to me. I'm going to add a little bit more greens in this because there is some tungsten coming off this light right there. If it bothers you, you could always switch to tungsten, which will kind of mute those tones a bit more, okay? So tungsten actually mutes the yellows coming through, but I kind of like it for this image. So I'm just gonna leave it, but I'm gonna adjust my white balance a little bit. So I'm gonna bring the white balance right about there. Okay, and I really dig that. That looks beautiful. Okay, I'll select those. So let me know if all that makes sense. You should be able to get really beautiful skin tones regardless. Again, here's a darker image that was shot of lovely brown folks like myself, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing. The reason why we have issues with the skin tones with pastel, it's always because in almost every case where someone's like, I'm not getting the right skin tones, it's always because of that issue where it's too dark. So remember, it's meant to be pulled up. So as you pull up and you get the skin tones into range, this is when everything kind of falls together. So yeah, that being said, pastel is meant to have brighter skin tones. So whether you are white, brown, black, your skin is not gonna look as dark as it might with like a modern effect, right? It's gonna look a lot brighter, but that's kind of part of the look, is to maintain like the color of a skin tone, but leaving it brighter. And so that way we get a more kind of natural vibe and look. I won't say natural, more aesthetically like kind of pleasing, right? Of a vibe and look. Like it's very flattering. That's the word I was looking for, flattering. All right. If you guys have any questions on in terms of learning more, again, what we demonstrated here was if you go to vfpresets.com, you can see the bundles. We're using the pastel pack along with the retouching toolkit. If you already have the retouching toolkit, you only need to get that once. So you just buy packs individually from there. If you like this look, it's right there and available for you. Otherwise, I hope you guys got some good insights from this. You guys can get some inspiration in terms of like how to get this color effect by just looking at the HSL from this video. And hopefully it was helpful. That's it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting ready for our coaching group. So we have a mentorship group that is starting in about 30 minutes. If you guys are part of that group, I will see you in the mentorship in 30 minutes. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you in the group. And also, by the way, the group is a great place just to ask people suggestions, get thoughts and ideas. Hey, do you like this pack? What do you think of this? I think getting other people's feedback is far more valuable than hearing my opinion. So that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.